Hello, this is Mike with TCAT's Deep Vinyl Tracks, and I thought I'd come on here and try to do a quick video. Um, Over the last couple of months, my wife has started her her own business where we go to thrift stores, and I kind of help her out with this. We go to thrift stores and find some things that can be like uh, flipped to make a profit off of, and it's been kind of a fun thing. But we've been going to, and that's one of the things I've been up to the last couple of months, besides moving and other things that I talked about before. But we started going to a place called the Goodwill Bins, where they put out, I don't know if you've been to one of these places, but they put out all of these bins full of stuff that hasn't sold in their Goodwill stores, or just stuff that's been randomly donated. They throw it into bins, and it's kind of a free-for-all. People just grab until they get what they want. And when you go up to pay for it all, you pay by the pound instead of by the item. So anyway, we've been going to these places, and of course I keep my eye out just in case something interesting comes in as far as CDs or vinyl. And so I've picked up quite a few things in the past couple of weeks since we started doing this. And I thought, well, how am I going to show this and make it kind of a short video at the same time? I thought, well, I better split it. So, because I've got quite a few CDs and some interesting records that I've found, I'm going to do the CDs first. So I'm just going to kind of flip through these quickly with since there's so many of them, with very little fanfare. The first one is 9 Inch Nails. This is a remix album of the song Closer. It's called Closer to God. So what you have on here are basically 9 different remixes of Closer. And it seems kind of strange that you'd have so many remixes, but I have to say that this is probably the best remix album I've ever heard. Just because it not only has a remix of all the songs, but they're sequenced in a way that it takes you on kind of a weird journey. And by the time you get to the 8th track, it's almost depressing. I mean, you're deep down into this dark place before it flips over to the last track, which is the original version of Closer. So, and by the time that starts, it's like a ray of sunshine, believe it or not, even though you know what that song sounds like, compared to how low this album gets you. By the time it gets to the end, it almost lifts you up, believe it or not. Anyway, I really like this, and it was fun to see this. I also found 9 Inch Nails Further Down the Spiral. This one has some very interesting remixes of a lot of the different tracks from that album, The Downward Spiral. And again, it's considered an EP, but it's long enough to be more than that. But again, it's the album of remixes. So the two of them together work as companions to The Downward Spiral. And I'm on a quest to try to get all of the 9 Inch Nails albums, all their EPs, everything that I can get my hands on, to have the whole collection. So, moving on, Greta Van Fleet. I've got a hold of a copy of their album called Anthem of the Peaceful Army. And big fan of Greta Van Fleet. I have not heard this album yet, so I'm excited to hear that. I didn't even know this existed. Eric Clapton's Unplugged is probably one of my favorite Unplugged albums. That one, and of course the Nirvana Unplugged. This one here, I've had a copy of it for years, but this one here is a deluxe version of it and has 2 discs. The first disc is the regular album. The second disc has 6 alternate takes and a couple of tracks that were not on the original album. So, kind of a surprise to see this, and of course I picked it up for cents on the dollar. Also the Unplugged collection, which has a sampling of a bunch of different artists that did unplugged concerts. Got Stevie Ray Vaughan, Eric Clapton, Lenny Kravitz, The Soul Asylum, Neil Young, Rod Stewart, Paul McCartney, Elvis Costello, 10,000 Maniacs, REM, Annie Lennox. They're all on here, so nice little compilation. Picked up a copy of So by Peter Gabriel. Of course, I already had this, but my copy was quite chewed up and used very heavily, so it was good to find a clean copy of that. This 2-disc compilation called Peace Songs. This is a collection of a lot of different artists, from Avril Lavigne to Elvis Costello, Leonard Cohen, Billy Bragg, Travis, Spiritualized, Basement Jaxx, David Bowie, The Charlatans, Beth Orton, and G Love, David Usher. A lot of different styles and everything. Probably about half of these are covers and the other half are originals, and a pretty good compilation. I picked up a copy of Yeah Yeah Yeahs. This is Fever to Tell, and that's what the disc looks like. Stan Getz actually got one that was jazz, with guest artist Lorindo Almeida. This is kind of a Brazilian style album, South American jazz. Arcade Fire's Funeral. The Chemical Brothers, Brothers Gonna Work It Out. This is actually a collection, an interesting collection of a lot of different tracks from different artists. Many of them I haven't heard of, but there's a few on here that are familiar. Chemical Brothers do a couple of theirs, but they also remix Manic Street Preachers, Spiritualized, anyway, there's quite a few on here. So, interesting kind of DJ mix album. It's only 5 tracks, but there are several songs on each track. Dinosaur Jr., Where You Been? This is an album I've always loved. Had a copy several years ago, and that has long gone missing. So a new copy of that, plus also their album that came out before that, Green Mind. Another great Dinosaur Jr. album. Oh. Some of these cases are a little well used, but the CDs themselves are in good shape. Pavement, Brighten the Corners. Haven't heard this album yet, so I mean, for cents on the dollar, of course I'm going to pick it up. Pulp, another album I haven't heard, but I have heard Pulp before. This one is called Different Class. Love Portishead. This is Dummy. May have already had a copy of this. Had a chance to get this on vinyl about 10 years ago, and I thought, oh, it will come along again. Haven't seen it since. I wish I would have picked it up on vinyl, but I love Portishead. The soundtrack to Falcon and the Snowman. This is all done by Pat Metheny. But, of course, there's the track This Is Not America, which features David Bowie on vocals. Other than that, it's all Pat Metheny. Here's a box set that I was really happy to find. Couldn't pass this up. This is Martha Argerich, I think is how you pronounce that. This is a Dutch gramophone collection of her 8 piano solo recordings for that label. There are actually 4 different box sets, and this is the first of those 4. I'd like to be able to find the others, but this was practically hard to pass up. They kept the label off the shrink wrap, and there's what was pasted on originally on the back of the box, showing all of the albums. Get a nice booklet that talks about each one of the albums. The original debut album she put out. She's a great pianist if you've never heard of her. This one has Chopin, Brahms, Liszt, Ravel, and Prokofiev. This one is all Frédéric Chopin. This is both Liszt and Schumann. Another one with all Frédéric Chopin tracks. And you can see the back of it. It looks like the vinyl covers. One that has all Ravel compositions on it. 24 Preludes by Chopin. So another Chopin. Bach. And Schumann. These are well done albums. She's quite an amazing pianist. Her other collections have to do with like the concertos, the piano concertos she did with other ensembles, and another collection features the recordings she did with other labels. So very good box set. I was really happy to see this. And it was in the bins. Just people were passing it right by. Another box set, The Best of the Blues. This is one of those tin box sets. You know, it was cheap. I picked it up. It had a pretty good list of artists on here. B.B. King, Buddy Guy, Charles Brown, Ray Charles, Mississippi Fred McDowell, Memphis Slim, Lightnin' Hopkins, John Lee Hooker, and it's a pretty good collection. Inside, I don't know if it originally came with a book, but inside it was just only the actual CD holder that opens up like so. All made out of recycled materials, by the way. Not familiar with this band. This is a band from Toronto. After Funk. Looked very interesting. And I've looked them up. They're not in Discogs, but I did look up their website. Looks like it might be an interesting listen. This compilation called the Limitless Luxury Collection. It had some interesting sounding artists and songs on it. United Future Organization. You got Thievery Corporation, Jazzanova, Ryuichi Sakamoto, Air, a lot of interesting sounding music on this. Another box set of classics, just a good variety of stuff on that one. Another local artist, I think. I don't know much about this guy, but it looked interesting. John Wilson. Love is Louder Than All This Noise. These are 2 different albums. One of them is supposedly loud. The other one's more of a softer one, from what I understand. But I haven't given them a listen yet. The Rolling Stones, Big Hits, High Tide, and Green Grass. Of course, everybody's pretty familiar with this one. Also, the Rolling Stones, I think this is their latest studio album, Blue and Lonesome. Nice copy of that. And some pop punk. I was just watching Randall Weavers' video about pop punk, and That's a funny thing is, funny coincidence is I picked these up just today. We got Suicidal Tendencies. This one's called The Art of Rebellion. Now, the interesting thing is I found there was a lot of these punk CDs. I mean, lots and lots of them. I thought I hit the gold mine, but I got looking through them, and most of them were quite unplayable, quite scratched up. I ended up picking up 5 that were in fairly decent shape that looked like they would be able to play okay. Whoops. Well, that one did before I dropped it. Should be fine. SNFU, Snafu. This one is called Something Green and Leafy, This Way Comes. Interesting cover. Again, one of those bands I don't know a lot about, but it looked interesting. Another Propaganda album. This one is just full of outtakes and rare tracks. Tons and tons of songs on this, and it's only 1 disc, so they're probably quite short. The name of this collection is called Where Quantity is Job Number 1. NoFX, The War on Heroism. There were a bunch of NoFX albums. Again, these were the best 2 that I could find. Somewhere in Texas, there's a village missing or without its idiot. Can you guess who it is? And this NoFX album. This is called Wolves in Wolves Clothing. Cool thing about this one is it shows 2 discs. I opened it up. Of course, the original disc is there, but the second disc is a fat-free sampler. And you got, that was a nice surprise. You got some interesting sounding bands here. I've only heard of the Lawrence Arms before. There's 2 tracks by them, but there's also the Loved Ones, the St. Catharines that has a song called Burn Guelph Burn. Interesting. None More Black, Smoke or Fire, Love Equals Death, Western Addiction, and Good Riddance. 2 songs by each one of these artists, so should be an interesting collection. So that's it. Now you can see why I had to split these 2 up, because things were just piling up. So hopefully tomorrow or sometime really soon I'll be able to show you the vinyl that I've picked up. And there's a few things there that will surprise you most likely. So make sure to watch, and thank you for watching this. We will talk to you later.